Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Super Sentai Power Hour. I'm Trevor.
Um, he doesn't have a cool name yet.
I think the video skipped there. Hopefully it doesn't show up in the final product. Anyway, we decided to make this podcast because we're both huge fans of Power Rangers and Super Sentai and wanted to share our fandom with the world. For me personally,
Because according to YouTube a while ago, Power Ranger content doesn't do well, but like Mighty Morphin Power MMPR Toys did a video saying that YouTube doesn't like Power Rangers for some reason, but we don't care. We're doing this anyway.
Pretty much. As for me personally, I got into Power Rangers at Lightspeed Rescue, very beginning of Lightspeed Rescue. It's still my favorite season. Carter Grayson will always be my number one Ranger. He is the Red Ranger template for me. He's courageous, he's brave, he goes out and leads the team as he should. And pretty much no Red Ranger since has really topped him for me. Even older Red Rangers like Tommy and oh my god, my dogs.
Doggo.
Anyway, every Red Ranger since has never really topped him for me. Even older Red Rangers like Tommy and Jason, they're great. Don't get me wrong. Especially Jason in the MMPR days. We'll get into him later.
Carter is probably one of my favorite Red Rangers, but I would say, well, he's my favorite Red Ranger, but after him, I would say maybe Wes from Time Force is the second favorite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Wes is interesting to me because he started out as very gung ho and he was just like, yeah, I want to do this. But especially for the first couple of episodes, I can't remember the name of the Pink Ranger right now. Jen? Yeah. Jen didn't really like him. He thought he was just a rich boy that was kind of feigning interest, I guess.
And plus the whole point of the fact that he's genetically connected to her fiance, who she just witnessed get killed.
Pretty much. So we'll talk about Time Force and its Sentai equivalent, Time Ranger, in another episode. But why don't you tell the people your history with Power Rangers and Sentai? It's very similar to mine.
Well, I got into it around the same time. Well, my introduction to it was I had the 1995 movie on VHS, and I spent a period of time not knowing that it was a show and thinking it was the movie. But then I got the Green with Evil VHS tapes and watched those to the point where those tapes stopped working, and watched some. Found out that it was either Lightspeed or Time Force. I remember watching it on TV, then kept watching it around. I stopped watching around Operation Overdrive, but over time I discovered the Japanese series Super Sentai and got back into it.
Yeah,
because with Power Rangers, it's but with Power Rangers, it's one of those things where it's a kids show here in America, but then you get into the older demographic of the Sentai, then you get back into it as an adult. But Sentai, that's another topic.
Yeah. For those who actually don't know where to watch Sentai, I'll get into that real quick. There are a lot of... It's pretty much fan subs at this point. Except for Zyuranger up till, I think, Time Ranger at this point. Shout Factory has made.
They also made Jetman, so they have plans on making older Sentais.
That's actually really good. So Jetman up until Time Ranger, I think they're up to now. So you can buy those DVDs from Shout Factory and they stream them too.
Actually, I think we're on Hurricaneger.
Really? We're on Hurricaneger now? Alright,
Either
that's cool.
because I remember MMPR Toys did a video on it, I think. Or either Hurricaneger or Zyuranger.
Alright, well, that's great. But if you want official releases, you can go to Shout Factory, buy DVDs straight from them. I think they sell them on Amazon too. But if you want anything else, like older than Jetman or newer than Zyuranger Hurricaneger, then you gotta go to fan subs. I know Bunny Hat subs had a lot for a while. They're defunct now, I believe, for whatever reason. But I know TV Nihon, that's TVNIHON. They have a lot of the newer fan subbed series, including the newest Kira Major.
That's like the most definitive one that the fan base uses to watch Sentai.
And also, you can get, I believe, Zyuranger through Kaku Ranger on Verve.
Yeah.
And also, Kamen Rider. The original Kamen Rider is on Verve now. So, all 80-some-odd episodes of that. We might get into Kamen Rider at some point on this podcast. It's very much related to Super Sentai.
Well, Kamen Rider came first, and Sentai was like a spin-off.
Yeah. So, and even these days, Kamen Rider and Super Sentai have their interconnections. They show up on each other's shows all the time.
It's like a big shared universe, like Marvel.
Pretty much. So we'll talk about Kamen Rider at some point. But today's main topic is Zyuranger and MMPR.
Versus Mighty.
So, Mighty Morphin, for those of you who don't know, what came to the States through Saban as the American version of Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. And Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger is, what number is that? Let me look that up.
It's the 16th season.
Yeah, 16.
It came after Jetman.
Mm-hmm. So, now, let's just talk about what we think of the season for a little bit. What's your opinion on Zyuranger?
If you love Mighty Morphin and don't want your views on it hurt, or don't watch Zyuranger because it's so much better and it makes Mighty Morphin seem not unwatchable, but Zyuranger has much better storylines and it feels less like a toy commercial when compared to Mighty Morphin.
Yeah, Mighty Morphin being a 90s show was basically, hey, we have toys. Let's show them off.
For example, the Megazord, I don't think we got until like the 5th episode of Zyuranger, but in Mighty Morphin it's just like the weapons, the Megazords, all the power-ups, everything is just episode 1, buy our products.
Yeah, well actually, the main weapons for both seasons aren't available in the first episode.
Okay.
So, I'm just for... I watched both first episodes recently. Yesterday, in fact. So, it's pretty fresh in my mind. At least the first episodes. I'm going to watch the entire season.
I put on Zyuranger this morning.
Zyuranger is very good. It's one of the best Sentais you can watch. If you are just getting into Super Sentai, I would say watch Zyuranger. If you have Verve, as I said, it's on there. That's vrv.com. You can make a free account or you can pay for their premium service. I pay for it. It's very useful because I'm also a huge anime fan. So they have all sorts of anime. They have
Is it like you pay for it? Is it like you pay for it and there's no commercials or something like that? Or
yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
But it also gains you access to their entire catalog of everything.
That's
so
good.
They don't just have anime. They have old cartoons through Boomerang.
Yeah.
So you
It's
can
like
get like Scooby-Doo and Looney Tunes and
it's like a animation focused
yeah.
streaming service.
It's animation focused, but they have their own content on there as well. And their Verve Select, which is what the Sentai and Kamen Rider is under.
Okay, I haven't used that software that streaming service, but I've heard that's good for that type of stuff.
It is. But anyway, back to Zyuranger. It's a very good first Sentai. It doesn't get crazy with like tens of Rangers like Kyoryu or Deca Ranger.
Sure.
And it's not like I wouldn't call the original series of Sentai unwatchable. They're just harder to watch because it's harder to find a sub version.
And it's very like I love looking at old stuff with old visual effects, but for some people it'll probably be hard to get into with like how primitive all the visuals are.
Yeah. So the original team of Zyurangers is the Red Ranger Geki, the Black Ranger Goshi, the Blue Ranger is crap. Let me look it up.
The Yellow Ranger is boy, which is easy to remember because it's a boy in Japan.
All right, so here
it is.
So as you can see, this will be uploaded to YouTube, by the way. The Red Ranger is Geki, the Black Ranger is Goshi, the Blue Ranger is Dan, the Yellow Ranger is Boy, the Pink Ranger is May, and the Green Ranger down the line is Burai. Burai. And I think Burai is like Geki's brother or something.
Yeah, it's like Geki, he was supposed to be king of his tribe, but Burai was supposed to be, and he wants to kill Geki to get the power over his tribe, from what I remember.
Yeah.
I think
MMPR and Zyuranger are very similar up until you get to the Green Ranger, pretty much.
Because the biggest difference is Green Ranger gets killed off in Japan, but in America it was like they couldn't kill him off because it was a kids show, but they made it so like Tommy the Green Ranger loses his powers and leaves the show, but the character was so popular and sold so many toys that they had to bring him back.
Yeah, pretty much. And whereas in Japan, every new Sentai is a new team. For the first, 3 seasons of MMPR, they just used variations of the same team.
And then the fight scenes began looking like more cheaper because they had to film original footage, because then they created the Alien Ranger story arc to use the Copy Ranger suits.
Yeah, there's only 5 Alien Ranger episodes? 3?
It's a 5-part miniseries, which was basically just to get rid of the unused footage.
Yeah, and we'll get into Kaku Ranger another time, but Kaku Ranger is also very good. I haven't watched too much of it, but it's pretty good.
It's drastically different from what we got in Power Rangers.
Definitely. And then the second season of MMPR was supposed to be Die Ranger in Japan, and they never ended up using the Die Ranger suits, but oddly enough, in Super Mega Force, they had them in for an episode.
Yeah, they were called the Legendary Squadron Rangers.
We'll get into Super Mega Force another time. That's a whole nother bag of worms. But
let's just forget that ever happened.
And that's most people's opinion. I liked a lot of Mega Force and Super Mega Force, but we'll get into that another time.
I would like it if Gokaiger didn't exist.
Yeah.
If Gokaiger didn't exist, I would like Megaforce more.
Yeah, Gokaiger is Super Mega Force on steroids. It's done right, pretty
Let's
much.
say Gokaiger.
Pretty much. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. Don't want too many tangents. I don't think I've actually seen the original MMPR movie.
Oh, you haven't?
I don't think so. I think I had the VHS, but I don't think I ever watched it.
Huh.
So eventually I'll have to get to that.
We could do a commentary track.
Yeah, eventually. But anyway, so whereas in Japan everything was team by team, MMPR had 3 seasons of basically variations of the same team until Alien Rangers, where the original team was made into kids, and the Alien Rangers came in from planet Aquitar, was it, right?
Yep. The Aquitar and their species was called the Equitians, and well, they always kept the same costumes, but they would transition as the Zords. So they would use the Megazord stock footage from Japan.
Yeah, and for just as a side note, if you're into kaiju shows like Godzilla and Ultraman, anything like that, I think you'll get into Super Sentai because
I consider Power Rangers.
A lot of that is very similar. It's the big robo versus the huge ass monster, and especially in newer seasons of Super Sentai, not so much Power Rangers, but in the newer seasons of Super Sentai, like the newest I've seen of Super Sentai is Johuger. I haven't seen Ryu Soldier or especially not Kira Major. Kira Major is the newest one. I haven't seen any
I don't
of
even
those.
know anything about it. I just saw like the Megazord and that's it.
And I saw a little bit of Lupin Ranger and Pata Ranger.
That was a cool series.
It looks pretty cool, but it gets very, from what I've seen anyway, it gets a lot of Rangers like they've been doing for the last few seasons of Sentai.
Well, the problem is if you have too many Rangers, you can't really develop all of them as characters in one season. So that's why I tend to prefer start out with 3 Rangers and get 5 and 6.
Yeah, that's what I liked. I'm looking forward to starting Beast Morphers because that just got on Netflix.
I've seen the first episode. I liked it. I haven't finished it.
It's on Netflix.
Yep.
So I'll be watching that at some point because I really liked the Sentai that it was based off of. Can't remember the name.
Okay, that's one of my season.
Go Busters, right?
Tensumo Sentai Go Busters. Which sounds weirdly similar to another franchise I'm passionate about.
They actually the morphers in Go Busters actually say it's morphin time. That's really cool. But anyway,
the villains called the Megazords.
Yeah. Back to the topic at hand. Don't want to get too tangenty. So the first thing I want to get into when it comes to actually comparing the two shows is the Rangers themselves. As we already went, totally different characters. From in Zyuranger, they're members of different tribes from the dinosaur era or something.
Yeah.
And obviously in Mighty Morphin, they're teenagers.
Teenagers with attitude.
Teenagers with attitude.
Alpha, teleport 5 teenagers with attitude. Like Zordon, we should get professional military people. No, we need hormonal, stressed out teenagers to save the world from a demonic witch instead of getting people who are qualified.
I love how in the first episode of Mighty Morphin, Alpha specifically says, "Oh no, not teenagers." And Zoron's just like,
Don't say Zordon, not teenagers.
And Zoron's pretty much just like, "Bitch, get the teenagers."
I hope they're not hormonally distracted. That will sure be inconvenient if two of the Rangers develop a relationship and that gets conflict during these battles. Let's make sure the Pink Ranger is really attractive and the Green Ranger is also pretty active. Oh yeah.
Exactly. But anyway, as we said before, when it comes to story, you're better off watching Super Sentai, the Sentai, because it's actually a story.
This Mighty Morphin just killed today's villain.
Yeah. Mighty Morphin is very much Monster of the Week. Whereas there is more of an ongoing story in Zyuranger. But
and with Mighty Morphin, all you really need to do to get the story is episode 1, Green with Evil and Doomsday.
Pretty much. I mean, later on in the second and third seasons of Mighty Morphin, the story gets more like a story because the command center gets destroyed and everything.
It becomes more serialized in season 3.
Yeah, but we're going to focus on season 1 because that's what Mighty Morphin was based on, Zyuranger. So, now, as we said, now let's focus on the Rangers and Zyuranger. Geki is a prince. Goshi is some sort of knight. Same with Dan. Boy is...
It's a boy in Japan because it's a girl in America.
Yeah. And that's another Sentai thing.
It's so convenient that he has a gender name, and yet they can, of the opposite gender it is in America. Seriously, look at what it was so weird seeing. I always thought it weird seeing how broad her shoulders were when in costume, and it made so much more sense finding out that it was a male actor in Japan.
Definitely. So for those who aren't too familiar with the Sentai, in Super Sentai, a lot of Super Sentai shows, they had more male actors than in America, because in America, you had to have female representation.
Hooray for diversity.
Pretty much. And you'll notice in Mighty Morphin, you have the white actor, you have the black actor, you have the Asian actor, you have the two females.
You have a floating head in a tube.
You have a floating head in a tube. You have the obligatory cool robot with annoying voice.
You have a blue monkey in gold armor.
Yes. And in that's another thing they stole from Kaku Ranger Ninjor. I don't know what he was called in Japan.
He was Ninja Man, which Ninjor is a better name.
Definitely.
And his power-up was called Samurai Man.
Okay, then.
So they didn't really think too deep into what this guy's name is going to be.
So that's one thing MMPR has in its favor, but that's past season 1, so we won't really talk too much more about that. We'll talk more about that in another episode. But when it comes to the introduction of the Green Ranger, they definitely did it in two completely different ways. They showed the same basic footage, because it's the same basic footage, but the story is completely different.
The biggest difference is in Japan he was evil because he on his own choice, but Tommy in America he was evil because he was possessed.
Yeah, in pretty much everybody's watched Mighty Morphin. I would assume that if you're watching this, you've probably watched Mighty Morphin at some point. So it's not much of a spoiler warning. For those of you who haven't seen Zyuranger, spoiler warning, Burai is evil of his own choosing. And he ends up joining the team I actually haven't gotten that far yet, so you probably won't know more about this than I do.
I would say like 5 episodes after the team because they kill him off. Well, what happens is the reason why he gets killed off is the green candle from Mighty Morphin that when it goes out, his powers go out. But in Japan, the green candle goes out, Burai goes out. There's like this demon thing of a dimension that comes to him and tells him that he has to stay in this dimension to keep the candle from going out. And he would only like go to aid the Rangers in emergencies, and that's why he's not. They have to limit. He has to limit all the missions he goes on to himself from being dead.
All right. So that's a thing, and I actually really like that idea of him being actually controlled instead of, oh, here's an obligatory spell that controls him for 2 episodes. Alright, so now when it comes to the Mighty Morphin Rangers themselves, their personalities are very stereotypical. Jason is the leader.
I think that's like a 90s sitcom with high schoolers.
Jason is the leader. Billy is the stereotypical nerd. Zach is the go-getter. He's into hip-hop and dancing. And he does a lot of really weird fighting moves.
He was always my favorite of the fighters, just because I always liked how he combined like dancing with fighting.
Yeah. And then there's crap. What was Yellow Ranger? Trini, right? I'm having brain farts today, man.
Like her role was Billy is like this like really smart guy, but Trini's like there to like translate like the over complex science stuff to simple terms.
Yeah, Trini's the nerd translator because she's kind of the closet nerd herself, but she doesn't really let it out. And then you got Pink. Kimberly. I can't remember names today. And then you got Kimberly, the stereotypical pretty girl. I'm better than all of you.
Every 90s kid's first crush.
Pretty much. And then you've got the Green Ranger, Tommy. And Tommy is probably the most popular character from MMPR era, besides Jason.
Yeah. Supposedly the actor got paid the most. Supposedly.
Yeah, Jason David Frank is pretty much the most popular Ranger besides Jason these days.
I would say, like, Tommy, especially in the comics where he becomes Lord Draken, Tommy is basically the face of the franchise.
Definitely. And
meanwhile, in Japan, we don't really have, like, the main Ranger that's in all the marketing.
Yeah, in Japan, there is no Ranger face of the series. I mean, in the Dinosaur series, because there's multiple dinosaur series in Japan besides just MMPR and Dino Thunder.
Like 4 or 5.
And what the one that it was based on Kyoryu.
Zyuranger. Kyoryu, Zyuranger, that new one where they're knights. I forgot the name.
Ryu Soldier.
Yep. Which is going to be the next Challenger season next year, hopefully, if things go right.
On a side note, if Tokuger ever comes to America, they need to fix that robot.
Honestly, I think they should just keep that and just so we can all make memes about it.
Yeah, there are already memes about it, but
think of a whole new generation of kids with that as a big inside joke growing up. Hey, remember that show where the robot had a big robot thing coming out and it shoots enemies out of it? And remember where it was placed? Huh? Well, I would call that the robot's cockpit.
Pun intended. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Tokuger, by the way, is actually a really good series. It's fun. It's all about imagination.
I like it'll do well in America because one of the big gimmicks of the show is the Rangers could switch each other's costumes, meaning then they all have like their individual number, meaning that Bandai could take the figure of each Ranger, make like 5 different versions, and imagine all the toy sales that would get, because hardcore collectors will have to buy 5 of each Ranger.
Pretty much. It would pretty much be Super Mega Force all over again with the keys.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, so obviously in MMPR you got Jason, Billy, Trini, Zach, Kimberly, and Tommy, and
then eventually Adam, Aisha, and Rocky come in as the replacement red, black, and yellow.
Mm-hmm. And that's in the second and third seasons, which we won't talk too much about. We'll get to those in another episode.
Okay. A Zyuranger comparison?
Yeah. Now, let's move on to the Megazords, the robot.
In Japan, it's called Daijujin.
Daijujin, yeah.
I think that translates to, like, God dinosaur or something.
I have the wiki pulled up right here, actually. Let's see, Mandor. Here we go. Mecha Zyuranger. Guardian Beasts. So that's what they're known as in Japan.
And the biggest difference between the Megazords is they're sentient beings in Japan. Meanwhile, in America, they're just robots that
and
the
that's
Rangers
another
pilot.
big Sentai thing.
Oh yeah, there's so many. Most of the seasons in America, the Zords are just robots that get piloted, but in Japan, a lot of them are like Transformers, where they're just robots that happen to be alive.
Like, I know that was a very big thing in which one was RPM?
Zyuranger,
right? In Zyuranger, the Zords actually talk. Like, they have their own voice and they talk to the Rangers.
That was like a big thing missing from America. They had to even like cut out a lot of scenes in the Zord fights because in Japan the mouths of the Zords would open.
Yeah, and it's the same. It's the same basic thing in Zyuranger. They don't. The Zords don't really talk as much as their spirits do.
Because if I remember correctly, they're like it's like a godlike being when they're all combined with Titanus and the Dragon Zord.
Yeah.
Or whatever you can.
In Japan, they're actually pretty much gods, all the Zords. And for those who maybe don't remember or aren't as familiar with Mighty Morphin, there is an episode in both the Sentai and Mighty Morphin where the Megazord, or the Robo in Japan, gets destroyed. Yeah. In Mighty Morphin, it's literally the Megazord just gets destroyed. In Japan...
Are we talking Green with Evil or the True Thunder Zords?
We're talking about that episode where Rita or Bandora, they actually bring the Megazord back underground. And
okay,
yeah. In Mighty Morphin, Rita literally just casts a spell or something and makes the Megazord go back underground for a couple episodes. In Japan, it's way more serious. Here's
the thing. The Japanese series is, I wouldn't say it's an adult series. Children, there's more like the drama and the violence, and you take it's more serious when compared to Mighty Morphin, less lighthearted.
Yeah. In Japan, it's a way more serious affair. The gods of the Zords actually get properly mad at the Rangers and decide pretty much on their own that they don't want to help them anymore. If I'm remembering correctly. So, it's very strange. At least to me, it was when I first saw it. I originally watched Zyuranger a couple of years ago, before it was legally available over here.
I watched it when it was on YouTube for a period of time, before YouTube copyright stuff started really kicking in.
I'll just say I got it. I acquired it.
We all do that.
I acquired it.
I know a guy who knows why.
I acquired it a couple of years ago, and I only got up to the Burai fight, and then for whatever reason I stopped watching. And
so have you gotten to Bandora's backstory yet?
I don't believe so.
Because it turns out she has a son, and then the reason why she became evil is because her son was killed, and so she sells her soul to Satan to become a witch Pandora for revenge.
Alright. And I'm not really that big into spoilers, so you can spoil anything. This is my opinion on spoilers, quick side note. This is my opinion on spoilers. It's not a spoiler until you see it for yourself.
Oh, I would really look at leaks and plot stories to films before the film even comes out, even though I'm getting the entire film spoiled. I knew everything about the Rise of Skywalker before seeing it, but even though I knew everything, it was still a surprising experience, because it's less about knowing what happened, it's more about seeing the execution.
Exactly. And for me, it's a very superficial thing. If you're quote-unquote spoiled on something, you don't know really the context in which that event happened until you watch it.
Exactly.
But anyway, don't want to get too more into a tangent. So that's the Megazord Robo comparison. The weapons. Let's compare the weapons. They're
Well,
basic.
it's called the Halloween Cannon in Japan, and it's called the Power Blaster here in America.
Yeah. And if we go back to the wiki, the sword is called Gekiken.
Yeah, I forgot they had names in Japan, so there's more stuff to remember in Japan.
The Black Ranger's axe/gun is called Mothbreaker.
That's the only one I'm missing the toy of. I need to get with it to make the cannon.
The spear or lance is called the Tricara Lance. The daggers are called the Saber Daggers, and the bow and arrow is called the Terra Arrow, and Burai's weapon is called Juosoken,
which we all know as the Dragon Dagger here in America.
Exactly. And then, as Anthro Ranger said, it's called the Howling Cannon in Japan, which is a much better name for a weapon, in my opinion.
Because everything was just power sword, power lance, power dagger, power cannon.
Pretty much. It wasn't very well named.
I mean, a lot of the weapons got better names over time, but this was like season 1 when everything was just power.
Pretty much. And when it comes to actually acquiring their weapons, I remember in Zyuranger, the Rangers actually had to go on a huge-ass quest, a couple episode quest, to actually get their proper weapons.
That's like a big difference between Rangers and Sentai. It's all just about getting to the point here in Power Rangers, just get straight to the action, but in Japan they want to build up the story and just get the weapons when it's necessary for the story, not straight away just for toy sales.
Pretty much. In America, it was very much Zordon's just like, oh, you have weapons, and they pull them out of their asses. In Japan, they go on a huge-ass quest that lasts a couple episodes, 2 or 3 episodes.
I think it was 2,
if
I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I haven't watched The Ranger since 2016.
So, it's very more story-related, and as we said in the beginning, if you haven't watched Zyuranger and you're very familiar with Mighty Morphin, maybe don't watch Zyuranger, because it will completely ruin Mighty Morphin for you.
And if you love Tommy and you don't want to see him die, yeah.
Yeah.
I know a person who refuses to watch The Ranger because she doesn't want to see Tommy die.
Yeah. I personally, when it comes to sixth Rangers, Tommy is pretty much the go-to.
I would say he's the good like prototype of what they are, but I feel like we've gotten better ones like Quantum Ranger, Titanium Ranger, and
oh yeah, in my opinion, Tommy was a great template to build off of, but we've definitely gotten better Sixth Rangers. Like even I don't remember what it was called, but whatever it was called in Lost Galaxy.
The Magma Defender.
Yeah, Magma Defender. Magma Defender was a very, very good character.
I've never seen the Japanese version of Lost Galaxy Giga Man, but I from what I know, it's extremely different.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Gingaman is very focused on the actual Zords. I think they're called spirits in Japan. I could be completely wrong on that. I haven't watched Gingaman either. I want to, definitely. I have it, but I just haven't watched it yet.
Lost Galaxy is my all-time favorite season, so I feel like I need to watch it.
Maybe we'll have a watch party over Skype. I'll connect to my Plex server.
Okay.
But again, that's for another episode. Alright, so that's the weapons. So let's go over the other characters. In Zyuranger, Rita is named Bandora. And as Anthroranger already pointed out, she has a son, apparently, and who gets killed, and she basically sells her soul.
Because that's what I'll do if my kid gets killed. Oh, my son's dead. Oh, well, I guess I'll practice the occult and kill people with dark magic.
Pretty much. And in the very first episode of Zyuranger, it is very, very different, actually. Whereas in the first episode of Mighty Morphin, it's just, hey, here's a space trash can. Let's open it up. In Zyuranger, it's pretty... It's the same footage, obviously, but there's a lot more of it. These astronauts go to this other planet, and...
I think, wasn't it like Planet Nemesis?
Yeah, Nemesis. They go to
but in America...
Yeah, they go to Planet Nemesis, and they find this container in the sand or the dirt, and they're just like, what the hell is this? And they
look, an ancient device that has a pentagram on it. I wonder what will happen if we remove it. I'm sure no demonic entity is going to come out.
And the Zordon equivalent in this series, the Zordon equivalent, I guess you could say, is the White Witch Barza, who starts off at the very beginning of the episode as a janitor.
I distinctly remember it was like, there's a scene where he's like working as a janitor, but then like his ear goes from a normal human ear to like an elf ear when he hears the fact that Bandora is released.
Pretty much. Yeah, his ear literally extends from his body. He listens up to the sky, and he's just like, no, don't open that. You'll release her.
That ear scene is the pinnacle of special effects, and there will never be a special effect that tops that ear transformation.
Yes. But obviously the astronauts can't hear Barza, so they release Bandora, and Bandora has her I guess you could call her gang, who are called
Japan.
They're called Pleprachan,
Finster,
Bookback.
I think that's Squat.
Yes. Totepat.
Babu.
Yep. Rami.
Scorpina.
Griffozer.
Goldar.
Yep. Kai.
I don't remember. I think that's her son.
And obviously we already went over the golems. They're the Putty Patrol.
Yep. And we see more in Japan, there's they never show it in America, but there's like the stop motion scene where like their clay models coming from the ground, which
And
was
then
always like a cool
and then
that we never got.
the top is called Dai Setan.
Yeah, that's like the demon she sells her soul to. In Japan, he's called Lothor. In America, he's called Lothor.
Yep. So that's and obviously that's not what we know them as in America. In America, they're Rita,
Goldar, Finster, Squat, Babu, Scorpina, and I think I don't remember which ones I said.
yeah. So, and obviously in later seasons of Mighty Morphin, we ended up getting Lord Zed.
I am Lord Zed, supreme ruler of all that is good and pure.
And in Japan, there was no Lord Zed. So
he was the original creation here in America. He was the first original villain character that's not stock footage.
And without going too much into the second and third seasons of Mighty Morphin, I really like Lord Zed. He's a very unique top-end villain. Although, I really don't like what they ended up doing with him.
Supposedly what happened was some parent complained that he was too scary for their kids, so they had to tone him down. He's a villain. What do you expect?
And for some reason, Rita wasn't scary. Goldar wasn't scary.
Well, Lord said he's a guy who had his flesh melted off, and apparently some parents thought that their kids can't handle a guy in a rubber suit.
'Ugh. 90s parenting. But
it makes you wonder what would happen if Power Rangers first premiered today, if there will be the parent complaints, because Power Rangers was very like controversial with its violence back then.
Yeah, I mean, if actually, that's another good topic for a podcast. So we'll leave that for another episode. What would happen if Power Rangers was just released today? We'll leave that for another episode. But, alright, so let's go deeper into the plot of Zyuranger. Zyuranger's plot is very much a plot. So, obviously we said in the beginning, the Rangers are all descendants of a tribe. Or they're not descendants, they're all part of a certain tribe.
Because what happened was they were I think they were frozen in suspended animation for centuries.
Mm-hmm. And in that first episode, you actually see Barza use colored keys to unlock their frozen animation doors and awaken them. And it's actually pretty cool. You see them with their arms crossed and everything, with their weapons in their hands. They're very heroic.
They look so much more badass when compared to the teenagers from Mighty Morphin.
Oh, definitely. And even in Gokaiger, when you see them actually come back, they're very much treated like legendary warriors.
Yeah, that was cool because they still had their original costumes.
Exactly. Which, again, topic for another episode, Gokaiger, but Gokaiger treated their legendary rangers like legendary rangers. But anyway, back to the plot of Zyuranger. The Rangers were all their own tribes, and they have very intricate backstories. As we already went over Burai, Burai was the threat to Geki's throne or something.
If I randomly fade out, it's because my battery's running a little low, so...
Alright. So we'll try to keep this a little short. So, and I love what they, from what I remember of Burai, I love what they did with Burai.
He was, honestly, Tommy, of course, he's an awesome character, but as all the Ranger forms he's taken, but in terms of the Green Ranger himself, Burai is so much better than Tommy.
Oh, I would agree. From what I remember, the Green Ranger character in Japan was built up so much better. This evil Ranger with dragon powers comes up, and Geki remembers Burai, and Burai remembers Geki. So they already know each other.
And I would imagine he was a bigger deal in Japan because this is the first time there's been more than 5 Rangers in Japan.
Oh, I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, he was the first one.
Yeah, interesting. So now let's do a quick comparison of other things like the monsters in Zyuranger. The monsters are treated like monsters. They're very much treated like a threat to the city.
I think they were more comedic in Power Rangers when compared to Sentai.
Oh, definitely. Like that pig one.
The pudgy pig. I forgot what it was called.
Yeah.
For a lot of the classic Mighty Morphin monsters, I tend to remember their American names a little more.
Let's see. No, that's not it. Alright, well, I'll look that up at some point and put it in the notes. But for that specific episode, I remember in the Mighty Morphin, it was literally this pig going on an eating spree of all the town's food. And
his mission was to get rid of their food supply.
And in Japan, I think it was a very similar mission, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, a lot of the monsters had the same mission on Earth compared to both seasons. It was just, I think they were more comedic in America and more menacing in Japan.
Yeah, definitely, because the whole situation was more menacing in Japan. Because, as we already talked about in the first episode, Bandora comes to Earth, and she actually, clumps buildings together to make her base. It actually says Bandora's palace on it.
And in America, Rita Repulsa, she wants to take over the world, have political power, but in Japan, she wants genocide. So there's, a bigger threat.
Oh, definitely. And you can even see it in the scenes where people are running about and everything. In Zyuranger, the people are very obviously scared that, you would be if some omnipotent being started moving buildings around.
Oh yeah, we don't have a Bulk and Skull type character in Japan. There's no real comic relief.
Yeah, and also, I personally, when it comes to Bulk and Skull, I really like their arc. They actually have a character arc. They're the only real character arc in the series.
I would say Bulk and Skull are single-handedly the two greatest Power Ranger characters, and I don't mean that as a joke. I literally mean it.
Yeah, they're something. They go from bully to appreciative.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that another time. But just know, Bulk and Skull, they're the OGs.
And why does their theme song? Why does Bulk and Skull's theme song work so perfectly with Chris Chan?
I've never thought about that before. Oh my god! But anyway, back to the monsters. They're called Dora monsters in Japan, and they're very much treated more of a threat than they are in Mighty Morphin. As we previously stated, they're treated in Mighty Morphin as more monster of the week. Oh, the Rangers have to defeat this. This week. The monster is eating our food supply. The monster is trying to take over the amusement park. But in Japan, they're usually in the same vein, but it's treated more as, hey, this is a threat to our society. So the Rangers have to go take care of
it. And in Japan, they're allowed to, because I don't know if it's just the censorship, it's different, but we're allowed to see like more damage in the city in Japan.
Oh yeah, definitely. In America, especially in the 90s, violence was very toned down. You really couldn't show blood. Blood was completely off the table. Whereas in not just Zyuranger, but a lot of Sentai,
shot at.
A lot of Sentai series, the Rangers will actually, if they're unmorphed, they will actually bleed, and you will see them get physically hurt.
In Power Rangers, it's like they're getting like shot at, blown up, punched, but their skin is perfectly fine. Meanwhile, in Japan, like you said,
yeah, in Japan they get bruised, they get actually physically beaten up, and you see cuts and scars. It's very much more realistic. Well, as realistic as you can get. Especially with the more modern seasons of Sentai. Realistic isn't really a term you would use.
At this point, Sentai should just be animated.
Pretty much. Especially, I can see Tokuger as an anime.
That series just felt like a anime that happened to be live action.
But anyway, that's another good topic for our podcast. What if Sentai was animated? But all right. Any ending thoughts on MMPR versus Zyuranger? Of the two, what's your favorite?
Well, Zyuranger, but Mighty Morphin, it's a good show if Mighty Morphin, if you're going to it, never seen it before as an adult, it's hard to watch. It's one of those shows where, oh, I heard this was so awesome when I was a kid. Oh, I have so many fond memories of this. But Mighty Morphin's one of those seasons where it has some of the best fight scenes in all of Power Rangers, but it has some of the weakest story of all of Power Rangers. But
oh, definitely.
Without Mighty Morphin, we wouldn't have Time Force, we wouldn't have Dino Thunder, we wouldn't have all the seasons that keep us into this show.
I mean, for those who don't know, I'll briefly touch on it. Turbo pretty much killed the series for a while.
the reason why In Space had such a big budget and was like so well done is because the production team just assumed, hey, this is the final season, this show's going to end, let's make it the best we can.
Exactly, which is why at the end we actually see Zordon get killed off.
And Rita ends that getting redeemed.
Pretty much. But we'll talk about that in another episode. For me, I actually am a huge fan of Mighty Morphin. I agree with you on the story. It pretty much has no story. It's pretty much just to sell toys, but it's a classic. Without Mighty Morphin, you wouldn't have a lot of the structure of the show that we see today. And even now, the general structure is changing with more recent seasons. I mean, in not Beast Morphers, not Ninja Steel, but the one before that.
Dino Charge?
Yeah, Dino Charge. That's what I was trying to think of before.
Yeah.
In Dino Charge, just like in Kyoryu, they actually had to go out and find the other Rangers.
Dino Charge I really liked that season because that was the first time we've ever had like 10 Rangers in one season.
Yeah, and just so people know, that's another Sentai thing. Like having more than 6 or 7 Rangers in a season. I mean, Deca Ranger in Japan, for those who don't know, Deca Ranger is SPD here in America. Deca Ranger in Japan had what, like 10, 11 Rangers?
I mean, SPD technically had more because of the A squad Rangers, but I don't really count like villain Rangers as part of the team. But in Japan, we had, I think there were like 1 or 2 extra Rangers in Japan.
I mean, in Japan, there was not just whatever the Omega Ranger was called in Japan, but
in the final episode of SPD, we randomly got like this new Silver Ranger out of nowhere. I think she was a bigger part of Japan's Deca Ranger. Mm-hmm. And Cat Manx, she became like Orange Ranger briefly. I think that was a bigger
Oh yeah, the Cat Ranger was a bigger thing in Japan. I haven't seen all of Deca Ranger. I've only seen about half of it. But I do know that a lot of the Rangers that only got a 1 or 2 episode thing here in America were a much bigger deal in Deca Ranger in Japan.
And as far as I know, Boom, the Orange Ranger, he only appeared in like a dream sequence for like 2 seconds, but I think that was an American creation because if you look at the helmet, it's like a reuse of the In Space Rangers.
Mm-hmm. So the structure is very much changing for Power Rangers in more recent seasons. Power Rangers is very much getting a revival these days.
Well, because Hasbro just bought it, so we expect a lot of new things in the near future.
Oh, definitely. And whereas everybody knows the Disney era is kind of frowned upon in the Power Rangers community, I'd say.
I would say, in terms of the action figures and the toys, I feel like the Disney era, that's with Overdrive, and Mystic Force, those figures, they always broke on me. So I feel like, in terms of the quality of the products, that's when they were the weakest. But the shows, I feel like that's when they adapted the Sentai the most, like, directly in those seasons.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'll always love Ninja Storm. That was, like, one of the first seasons for me where I'm just like, wow, this is really cool.
That was an awesome season back then. The Navy and Crimson Rangers, they were awesome.
Definitely. And they actually had a really nice arc to them. It's a nice story arc. Just like they did in Hurricaneger.
That's a good example of villain Rangers that were... A lot of the times the villain Rangers tend to be like possessed or under a corruption spell, but the Navy and Crimson, they were like by choice.
sort of by choice.
It's been a while. I don't fully remember their story.
Yeah, me neither. But we'll go more in depth into the other seasons in other episodes. But I'll always love Mighty Morphin, not just for nostalgia, but it's important.
I think the fight scenes in Mighty Morphin are some of the best fight scenes in all of the franchise.
Oh yeah, I would totally agree with that. When it comes to the fight scenes, they're great. I mean, everybody knows Tommy's signature fight noises.
And back then, this was before they could just like 3D animate all the effects. This was when they had to get like actual stunt actors.
Mm-hmm. I mean, these days, the from what I've seen, I haven't seen all of Dino Charge, but I'm looking into finishing it at some point, or actually restarting it because I don't really remember much.
I love the first half of Dino Charge, but the second half it's less good.
Yeah, and I've seen some of Ninja Steel. Ninja Steel is pretty good from what I've seen.
Same with Dino Charge. The first half of Ninja Steel was okay. It had some great ideas, but the second half, it just the effort wasn't as good.
I mean, from what I heard, the huge ass crossover episode at the end did pretty well.
That was a good episode. I enjoyed that for what it was, but it should have been an hour-long special instead of just a half an hour.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they were planning up to that. I mean, from what I know, they were planning up to that episode for a little while with Wes in a hooded figure or something.
Oh, it's not like Forever Red it was actually where they actually like made it part of the plot.
Mm-hmm. So,
and my phone is shutting down, so goodbye.
All right. So